Now we continue our next in this series of special normal coins, which sounds kind of weird, but it's true. So after the bicentennial era, nothing of this kind happens. They did introduce, however, reintroduce formal commemoratives. The series, although we'll see a few commemoratives along the way here, this is not about the commemoratives. So the first of these was the Thomas Jefferson coin and currency set. The point of this set was to commemorate the 250th year of Thomas Jefferson being born. Well, actually, he had been born in a long time before. Anyway, it went to 1793. Well, let's take a look here. So they have this here again. That's the currency set, and well, you see the years, and that's it from 1743 to 1993. But they actually released the set in 1994. Apparently, there's some good reason that he should be so commemorated. For one thing, he was one of the main proponents of having a decimal money system instead of going with the kind of money that England was using and used up until the early 1970s. So it would come with a dollar. I'm not too much concerned with that, but since we have it here, we'll take a look at it. Thomas Jefferson, architect of democracy, one of the drafters of our Constitution. In God we trust. 1743 when he was born, 1993 when this is being struck to commemorate him. But it is this coin. This is a nickel, an ordinary Jefferson nickel, or so it seems. If you look closely, the texture has a very distinctive look to it. It's called a matte finish. You can look in your red book under the list of more contemporary nickels, and you get up into the 1990s, and it says there's a matte Jefferson nickel from the Philadelphia Mint. There's our P from 1994, and it's where all the other nickels are a few dollars a piece. There's this one nickel, and it's like, well, a whole lot more. And so the reason is that these nickels were struck only for this particular kind of a special set that commemorated Jefferson. Here's a different view of his Monticello, probably more consistent with what Felix Schlag originally intended, and then they had him, no, just make it straight on like the familiar nickel we've seen from 1938 onward. And pretty much is about what we still have nickels even to this day, as I record this in 2026. Our nickels still have that same Monticello reverse, although the front has changed. So it says here, it's talking about what it is, created by Felix Schlag. And so they also commemorated him with the $2 bill. And that's not too interesting. It's not a rare thing. They just it had him, and it commemorated. There's the bicentennial. We've seen that before too. So that's what they did there. They commemorated the nickel. So now you know what that 1994 nickel is and what that's all about. Now, they were doing something every year. I don't have for show what they did for 1995. It was hideously expensive because it had all the gold coins, the gold bullion coins, I should say, the 2.5 and the 5, and there's no 2.5. There's a 5 and a 10 and a 25, I think, and $50 denominated gold bullion coins. There was also the silver bullion, those famous silver eagles, and they decided to put all those together in a silver eagle that was the first to bear the W Mintmark. And they were commemorating, I believe, 10 years of the W Mint being in operation. The W Mint had started making coins in 1974. They made a number of Lincoln pennies without a mint mark because they were seen at the time as more of an adjunct to the Philadelphia Mint than as a mint in its own right. They also made the Panama Centésimos, also dated 1974, and a number of the Centésimos afterwards. But since they had no mint mark, you couldn't tell that they were doing anything. Their W Mintmark doesn't show up in anything. No regular coin, no commemorative coin, no bullion coin, any other metal or other coin or metal disc. The W Mintmark makes its first appearance on a commemorative $10 gold piece, the one for the Olympics of 1984. And then in 1986, we start seeing that mint mark on gold commemorative coins and bullion coins. The first time the W Mintmark ever makes its appearance on a normal circulating type coin is this 1996 with a W Mintmark. But it is in all other respects a perfectly conventional dime. If it fell into circulation, it would simply circulate as a dime. And without looking at the mint mark, there's nothing else to distinguish it. This dime, however, was exclusively contained within the 1996 mint set, but instead of incorporating it in the existing mint set, they just added this little single cello coin holder and then a little thing here to explain about it. And this is the 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt dime. So they commemorated that with simply making a Roosevelt dime in the usual clad alloys of what the dimes were being made. And to this day, so far, are still being made. But from the W Mint, bearing the W Mint mark. So a little bit about Franklin Roosevelt and then the designer. And that's about it. So that was the next coin. Fairly minor thing. Now the next year, they had another coin. And that was to commemorate the Botanic Gardens. It's easy to imagine this one probably didn't have very many sales. I mean, if you haven't been around Washington, D.C. and visited so many other things there are, I mean, there's so many things to see even if you are there. I mean, you've got the Lincoln Memorial, you've got the Capitol, you've got the White House, you've got the Supreme Court, you've got the Smithsonian Museum, where there you can go in, and there's huge amounts of things on display. National Archives, where you can see the original Constitution, I think, if they don't hide it away, and other buildings. And somewhere in all of this, there's the botanical gardens, which, by the way, include the Rose Garden, which is something one might have heard of. Well, these gardens are being commemorated in 1997. And so it talks about the history of these different gardens and so forth. There's even a rather cool map here that tells you, okay, Botanic Garden, there's a lawn terrace, there's the Rose Garden, perhaps you may have heard of that in the news. There's a water garden for the First Ladies, there's some regional gardens, Independence Avenue and Maryland Avenue, 3rd Street, and it doesn't say what street's on the other side. Senator John Hines Environmental Learning Center and Amphitheater. Anyway, that's the National Garden. Somewhere in all of that, or maybe all of that, they're commemorating that. Apparently they're doing some expansion and so forth. George Washington wanted to cultivate a garden. Jefferson kind of helped establish such a thing by getting people to send all sorts of really exotic specimens from all over the world. And they were actually officially founded in 1820, and so on from there, and remains to this day. It's a living monument and a dream fulfilled. So, and it has this interesting French facade building here as part of the gardens. So that's what they have there. Now, what do they have in the United States Botanic Garden coinage and currency set, besides a tribute to our founding fathers and their shared legacy of this garden? The greatest service which can be rendered in any country is to add a useful plant to its culture. Wow. Okay. Well, here we have the Botanic Garden dollar again, a commemorative thing. And again from the P Mint for Philadelphia. And that's the same French facade building they have in the gardens. But over here is, the other matte nickel you always see in the 1990s is a 1997, and again, P, you can see the mint mark, Jefferson nickel, but with this interesting surface quality that's called a matte finish. And here they actually talk a bit about this matte finish. To produce this matte finish or mint state Jefferson 5-cent piece, both the obverse and reverse dies are frosted using a combination of aluminum oxide and silver dioxide sprayed under high pressure. Only one other Jefferson 5-cent piece has been minted using this procedure for the 1994 Thomas Jefferson coinage and currency set. So there we are. We just have the usual description. So here we have a rose. It's kind of the national flower, and kind of rose, like whatever. There's United States Botanic Garden, 1822. Well, this is made 1995, but actually they struck this in 1997. So they're just kind of running out of things to do, so they wanted to do that. 175th anniversary, but we're already a couple of years past that. And here is the 1997 nickel. So you can see it's 1997. And there's the back of it. And again, you've got this really neat matte finish. Beautiful cartwheeling there. And so forth. So, yeah, it talks about that. They included a dollar bill from Richmond, Virginia. So, rather than that, just a normal dollar bill. Hardly worth mucking with. They just threw it in there. So, there that is. And that one, because the Botanic Gardens are nowhere near so well known, ends up being a much more expensive nickel and an expensive set. Finally, you get to 1998, and they've moved to a new way of packaging their special coins. Okay, or they started using this, and this will be the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Commemorative Coin. Okay, how does that open? There we go. So, this is the Certificate of Authenticity. It's uncirculated. Robert F. Kennedy silver dollar, another one of their commemoratives, and a matte finish John F. Kennedy silver dollar. Again, you look, and there's a 1998 Kennedy matte finish half dollar. And here's all the specifications. Matte finish requires 2 extra steps in the minting of the coins. 1. Sandblasting the face of the coin die with a mixture of glass beads and aluminum oxide. Adding a hard chrome plate to the die for hardness and lubricity. Okay, so there they are. There's okay. Designers of this thing, commemorative coin, the Gilroy Roberts, we know. Then we get to the coins themselves. There we go. And, well, there's Robert F. Kennedy. 2008 commemorates, let's see here, 68, 78, 9, well, 98, 68, the third years he got assassinated. There's Robert Kennedy. So John F. Kennedy's brother. There's a dollar. Okay, but what we're really concerned with here is the regular half dollar, Kennedy half, which, interestingly enough, was struck in the 90% silver configuration. Well, they had started making that for proof sets at San Francisco in 1992, but this also struck in San Francisco, as you can see. It has that same distinctive matte finish. Very lovely. And same for the back. There's a half dollar. And that's the same matte finish, which again is much more pricey than most of the other half dollars immediately before and after it in the red book, because that is again the 1998 matte. But this is what it is. It's a part of a set that bundles that up together with the 1998 Robert F. Kennedy commemorative dollar. And that's what we're going to cover this time. And then after that, things are kind of quiet again.